From the studios of Foxboro Cable Access, located in the center of Foxborough, Massachusetts, you are watching Around Foxborough.
Welcome back to another episode of Around Foxborough. My name is Julie Love. I'm your host. Today we are having a great guest, so let's introduce her. Hi, thank you very much for coming to Around Foxborough today.
Thank you so much, Jury. My name is Danielle Riley. I'm here to share my book, Coach to Lead, Lessons from the Field, the Family, and the Front Lines.
All right, so can you tell us about the book? When did it get published and why you wanted to publish the book?
Sure. So I spent a long time thinking about all the lessons that I feel like I've learned in life. And one day I just decided that I wanted to share those lessons. And I feel like the lessons that I've learned came at really young ages, and then I was able to share those with others and then bring them into my adult life and into the business world. I also teach leadership as a part of my profession, and so the connection between the youth stories and the business world are very connected. So I published it in January and been supporting it ever since.
So how can people find your book?
Yeah, anyone can buy the book off of Amazon. It is listed as Coach to Lead. You do have to pick by Danielle Riley, as it's a little bit different, but you can buy it there, or you can also reach out on the website.
So the subtitle is Hard Lessons from the Field, the Family, and the Front Lines. What kind of field are you talking about?
That's a great question. I spent a lot of my late adolescent, early adult years coaching, and then I coached all the way up through my children, who are now, the youngest is 18. I primarily coach soccer, but I did get myself into coach basketball and even an appearance in lacrosse at one point in time.
So did you play sports growing up yourself as well?
I did. I was primarily a soccer player, but I did play softball and I did play basketball as well.
So did you grow up in Foxborough or somewhere else?
I grew up in New Hampshire and New York. So I had a little bit different exposure, but I've been in Foxborough now since 2002, and I feel like I've lived most of my life here.
So what is your book about? I know you have a table of contents in front of you. Can you share some of the contents?
Absolutely. So the book really is a journey that we all go through. So for example, I think that when we think about leadership starts at such a young age, and I don't know that we always appreciate it. So the book really allows us to dive in there. I think the first kind of group of topics is called Unapologetically You, and it's really about identifying the criteria that make you leaders and really how to exploit them as your strengths. The second main area of topics, because there's 16 chapters in general, talks about the grit and the growth. And that's really more about how do we overcome the challenges and demonstrate resiliency and build our leadership muscle by doing so. As the book comes to sort of an intersection, it really talks about then is more about not just the leader that you have become and the journey you've taken to get there, but as a leader, what do you do to help others become leaders, and how do you continue to be an exceptional leader? So the final two kind of areas of the book talk about Raise Her to Rise, which is really about adjusting your style of leadership to get the most out of people. And then finally, really about leaving a legacy that lasts. And that's about, what kind of leader did you ever set out to be, and what kind of leader legacy have you left behind? And that's done whether it be through others, whether it be through the family that you've built along the way, and even sometimes the leaders around you that you've lost.
Which one is your favorite chapter and why?
Yeah, I think the grit and growth chapter is my favorite. I think I resonate more with things. I feel good about things when people overcome challenges. And it talks a lot about common challenges in leadership that we go through. It talks about when something goes wrong, how do you avoid a spiral? It talks about imposter syndrome. It talks about making sure that you're taking one step at a time. It talks about progress over perfection. And I think it's those connections that we can all apply in any stage of our life. But by overcoming those, it's really what truly builds, I think, our character and our leadership aptitude for being a great leader as we get older.
So how is the feedback so far from the people who read your book?
It's been so kind, and it's very humbling. It's hard to put yourself out there and share your stories, but everybody has been absolutely wonderful. I've gotten a lot of great feedback that people are now naming their imposter, which is something I talk about in one of the chapters about imposter syndrome. I've gotten some feedback that people recognize that it doesn't always have to be perfection. People are allowed to make mistakes and recover from those mistakes. I've gotten a lot of feedback about the need for resiliency and just about the applied lessons. And people don't always connect the fact that some of the things we go through as adults, we actually started to first experience when we were in our youth.
So as you are going through these chapters, how did you make a decision of what would go in your book?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think I struggled with that a little bit because I think a lot of the lessons probably bleed into each other. But again, I really wanted to capture the different aspects of the journey. And I think it was really more the content that made it into the book were ones I had the most stories about. And a lot of those gravitated towards stories about when I was coaching, but also as a business leader.
So who are your targeted audience?
I think anyone from in the youth, adult, probably middle school and above can read this book and get things to take away from it. I think adults can read this book. As you'll notice, it's a very short book. It's more like a playbook than anything. We play on the whole terms of having playbooks for sports and then ultimately in business. And it's really designed to help you validate probably what you already feel, potentially what you already know, but just some tips and tricks on how you can potentially work towards making those a little bit easier for you or becoming a little bit better at them.
So now you published the book. Are you using this book as kind of a platform or to communicate with people? Do you like book gigs or seminar, or like how are you using this book?
Yes, I actually designed a few seminars for the book that we could do in different types of leadership settings. I would love to be able to share more of the stories a little bit deeper with the audience that's out there. But for right now, it also was one of my bucket list items. And so I really wanted to make sure that I did something I was going to be passionate about.
So what are your hope to get this book, maybe book tour, book signing, or more coaching?
Yeah, I think, again, I think I have a day job, so I have that still. I think this is, again, something that could be shared in teen audiences with high schools, and so potentially even at sports nights about when you're building leaderships and athletes. I think I'd be open to those events. I think it also has to do with leadership, have a format for lunch and learns about leadership inspiration, and I can actually take each module in this book and create leadership content around it.
So when you talk about grit and resilience, how do you describe that a little bit more about grit?
Yeah, I think so some of the challenges that we go through is a couple things. One is sometimes things go wrong. So what happens when things go wrong? How do you respond to that? As an athlete or somebody who's going through a youth program, it's really easy to fall into what I refer to as the spiral. One thing goes wrong, you get in your head about it. The next thing goes wrong, you get in your head about it. And then all of a sudden you just feel like you didn't play a great game. And so what do we need in order to remind ourselves that it's okay to be a goldfish, according to Ted Lasso? It's okay to have a short-term memory. It's okay to have one mistake, but then work on having a better result the next time. And I think the same thing happens in business. So specifically in that chapter, I talk about a board meeting that didn't go my way. And I could feel the board meeting getting away from me. I had to kind of pause myself. I had to be resilient, and I had to take that gritty perspective to kind of get myself back on track. And so those are the things that are important. I've seen athletes be really good at one sport, join a new team, not be as good. How do they get over that? How do they deal with the fact that they went from being a star to now being someone who has to work towards being a star? I think the same thing happens in our business careers. We're not always going to be the top person. So how do we deal when we're not? And how do we bring value and leadership to the table?
So as you're writing this book, did you discover something about yourself when you are writing, actually?
Yeah, I definitely did. I think a lot of these lessons I probably knew. I think as I, again, saw the intersection of maybe where they came from, I valued what and appreciated what they taught me today. So it might have been a lesson that I learned when I was younger, but the lesson, I can apply it to the situations I've been in later in life.
So I am in a generation, we never had social media, like, you know, I never had email until I was 22, but these are IT natives. What do you see in our teens as maybe you interact with them? And then maybe how do you think this book applies to our next generation, with especially social media, etc.?
Yeah, I think, well, the one thing about the book that I think is sort of similar to social media, but could also be capitalized on quickly, is it's short. Right? Every chapter in here is about 3 to 4 pages max, and as you can see, it's not a very big book. I think that's things that are that population that you describe needs things quickly and able to validate with, and I think that's what this book helps to do in some of those stories.
So have you worked with teens as a coach that you've seen some like fall, something like, the spiral that you talked about, and then like how did you pick them up? Like, before you published the book, as a coach, I'm sure you've seen meltdowns and then like cry, or like how do you describe that as a coach?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of, I guess that's a really great point. And I think the way I would answer that is my philosophy on coaching. I think when you think about coaching, a lot of times we attribute that to, can I give someone the best skill possible? Can I get them to win? And it's not all about that. And in fact, as a coach, as I progressed in my older years in coaching, I learned that it was more important for me to connect with whoever the player was, to make sure that they realized that what they went through was also something they were going to go through later in life. So when you think about, okay, I'm not the best person on the team, or maybe I worked really, really hard, but I didn't get an award. Well, that happens later in life when we get into business, right? We work really, really hard, but it doesn't always get recognized. So those were the things that I would help to pick out in the coaching moment, be like, it's not, keep working hard. Your time will come, the awards will come, and things will happen, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen just because you worked hard. So that was like a great lesson that I would tell my players all the time.
Do you still like get in touch with these kids and like, do they contact you?
They do, and you know what? They've been so amazing. Actually, they've been some of my biggest fans. I recently did do a book talk, and a good proportion of them showed up, so that was awesome. I'm still connected to them, partly because they're connected to my family, but I can run into a player that I coached 4 years ago and give them a hug. I can have someone tell a story about one of the times that either it was a good moment or maybe it wasn't such a great moment, but they remembered that. And I think when somebody remembers you, no matter what the moment was, it means that you've impacted them, and that's what I've always strived to do.
So what does your day job look like, and how is this book impacting you?
Yes, and I actually reference some of the people that I've led in my day jobs in the past. I have the luxury to lead multiple teams in my organization, and that's what I've done for the last probably 10 to 15 years. And so this is a good reminder for me in terms of when I think I have to kind of coach somebody in a leadership spot on what they might need to do a little bit better, or to feel better about the work that they're doing.
So do you work for non-profit or for-profit?
I work for profit in a business. I work for a tech company.
I see.
Yes, but I like, for example, one of the stories that I told was about two people that had worked for me in the past in different jobs. One of them I reference because she comes in one of my later chapters. It's called "When Your Team Becomes Your Family." And what we know is when you have trust and connection through what feels like a family, people are motivated and inspired to do things for you that you know will benefit them in the long run, and potentially the business as well. So for example, I know she used to tell me, I wouldn't do this normally, but because of the relationship we have, because of the trust I have in you, because of the leadership I see, I will do this for you. And I think that's a connection that I bring from what happens on the field, but also into the business world.
I see. So how did you connect the sports like soccer to a business? Where are the bridges?
Yeah, I think again it's connecting it through, like, there is an intersection at some point. And again, it comes back to some of those lessons that are shared. So for example, sometimes we doubt ourselves, right? And we've now learned to label that in some cases as imposter syndrome. That happens a lot as you get to be an adult. We talk a lot of people that underestimate themselves, or they use poor self-talk. So those are experiences that you can you can intervene with when you're coaching someone at a certain stage in their life, because they do it then. And the reality is that's also a lesson that shows up later.
Self-criticism. I was watching Zendaya's interview, and Zendaya's the top of the top A-listers, but she says she's the worst critic of herself and her acting. What do you say to that?
I think it's okay to be critical of yourself. I think it's not okay to let it get in the way. One of the things that we talk about specifically in the chapter, that it's you can be your worst enemy. Again, criticism and holding yourself to a standard to me, it's impressive and it's respectable. I think when it prevents you from truly seizing who you are, I think that's when we run into challenges. So I always say that an imposter can belong in your story, they just can't be in your ending.
What's the difference between imposter and a paradigm?
I might need a lifeline. Help me.
So paradigm is some of the image that you create of yourself. So how about, people talk about comfort zone.
Yes.
And then the paradigm shift. Because I am Japanese, I'm Asian. So the paradigm I have is maybe I have to be a certain way, but how do I shift that to empower myself? But then imposter, I'm not sure what the imposter and the difference between them.
I think it's the one thing is there may be an expectation around one. I think the other one is almost an infliction. I think, again, from an imposter, in my perspective, and I could be answering this wrong, but from an imposter in my perspective, I think it's something we inflict on ourselves. It's our feeling of that we're not good enough. It's not that someone else thinks we're not good enough. It's that our feeling of that maybe we don't deserve something, maybe we're not good enough for something. From the paradigm, I think it's a matter of sometimes we have to shift and be uncomfortable. I definitely get that. But I think in some cases maybe one leads into the other, but I don't necessarily know that they have to be one, they can be exclusive as well.
Well, thank you so much for that. How do you think we create those self-criticism, and where do you think it started? Say, some parents would say, hey, good job, I'm proud of you. That's American style.
Yeah.
Japanese style, shame, shame, shame. You're not less than, you're not enough. So in America, I feel like a lot of people wouldn't go through as much of self-criticism or self-bashing as maybe Asian or maybe different country. What do you think American people develop those feelings?
I want you to meet my children. They might tell you something different. I think it depends. I think you're absolutely right. I think there's definitely culturally difference. I tended to be very, very hard on my children. I tended to hold them to a higher standard. I tended to let them know everything they did wrong. We joke about my youngest daughter. She used to come off the field sometimes, and I would say, oh, we needed to do this, this, and this. And she'd say, I think I played pretty well. And I'd say, well, I didn't, and here's why. And so, but what I realized about that was there's a balance. I think as a parent specifically, and this book is geared towards not just people who coach, but people to have that coaching conversation in the car, right at home or at the dinner table. I think there's probably some that go too far, and I think there's some that are too far to the soft side. But I think the reality is figuring out what does your child need and how do you get the best out of your child. So I think it's good to set higher expectations. I think it's good to hold people accountable. I think on the other hand, though, is it going to motivate them or deflate them? And then how do you navigate around that? So
it's really tough.
It's really tough, yeah. But I think, when we get to be leaders in the professional world, we always talk about how do you flex to get the most out of people. And by flexing, it's, okay, so that person isn't going to respond to harsh criticism, they're going to respond to when they get acknowledged. Okay, so how do we shift that? Again, I don't want to be disingenuous about it, but I think it's something we pay attention to.
So do you coach different type of human beings that who gears towards more of harsh criticism, who cannot take it, how much can they take it? How do you gauge that and how do you coach that? Is that one of the book?
There is a chapter in the book, yes. And it talks, I have to figure out exactly which one it was. There's a chapter in the book that says push hard but love harder. And what I mean by that is I think it's okay to push hard. I think it's okay to hold people accountable. I think it's okay to demand things from them. If you're coaching them, you're trying to get the best out of them, and that's why you're there. I think the reality is your response is the way you're approaching that getting your result, or is it getting you a counter result? And so that's why I always say, if you create the trust with people, they know that what you're doing for them is in their best interest, and sometimes that helps, so that you don't have to necessarily adjust the way you do it. Other times you might just have to say, I'm going to pull this person aside and talk to them in private. Other people, I'm going to let them know how I feel on the field. And I may have had a reputation in the past of being a little bit vocal out on the field. So some of them I could give that to. Others I would have to pull aside and have a little bit more of a conversation with.
It's very tough. Sometimes it might work, sometimes it can destroy people.
Oh, yeah.
Like completely. So I think this book is reaching out to a lot of people. How are you marketing? How are you like promoting yourself?
I'm new at this, so I'm open to suggestions for anybody who might want to reach out to me. I really did it through my network. I would blog post on it as well and just kind of share more insights from each of the chapters. But I haven't really done too much yet, but I'm happy to start.
And what's your website again?
It's Coached to, the number 2, lead. Coach to lead. Wait. Yes.com.
All right.
Was that the toughest question? I'm not sure.
That's okay. But do you feel empowered after you had this bucket list done and then your book is out there?
It is. I do. I feel empowered. I feel like it also holds me accountable. I think it's important. If you say you want to, I mean, part of this book is trying to tell you to go for the things that are important to you, to keep your passion, to, have resilience, to show grit, to, always force yourself to rise, to leave a legacy. That's what this book tells you. And I think it's holding me accountable to make sure that no matter what aspect I'm in life, whether it be dealing with a teen or whether it be dealing with a grown-up leader, that I'm holding myself to the same standard.
And then what is your goal with this book?
It's going to sound kind of hokey. I think it's to try to make those who care about me proud. I feel like I've let so many people have touched me, and I actually referenced some of the leaders that have really impacted me in this book as well. And I felt like it was a little bit to give back to them, and then to also just really make those who have given me their time. I mean, think about all the kids that I've coached. Think about the grown-ups that have trusted me to be their leader. It's me giving back to them and hoping to make them proud.
Do you have anyone in your life that you really held accountable as like maybe leader or mentor that really impacted your life?
Yes, I have many of them. The ones that come to my mind and that I reference quite a bit in the book is my stepfather. My stepfather, I was so blessed to have him join my life when I was just 7 years old. And he did coach me at times, but his coaching hit me more when he wasn't on a field with me or he wasn't in a court with me. It hit me more based on the things he taught me. Later on in life when I didn't do something right and how I needed to handle it differently, or how I needed to think about others, or how I needed to not give up on myself. So that was definitely something. I also had a really good friend from Foxborough who certainly inspired me in this book. And she's passed on, but she's always somebody I think about and somebody I always want to make proud. We worked a lot together, especially as growing moms, growing business leaders, on how to balance what we did with the community and the teens, and then ultimately how we translated that to our family and also to our front lines.
Do you want to shout out their names?
Many people will know who she is, but Kristen Warriors was one of my favorite people.
Nice.
Yeah. So
I would say mental health. Do you talk about it a little bit in this book or not really?
Not really, no. And I think, that's definitely something I don't have any credentials in, so no. But I hope that some of these things in the book, like some of the stories in the book and some of the concepts, really do get at building confidence, building resilience, overcoming challenges that, again, not mental health, but things that could lead us to tough places at times.
What do you think of teens or a lot of people being super vocal about mental health, and then things that we never talked about, as I was I'm a survivor of many things, and then for instance, in Japan, if we say we have a therapist, maybe you lose a job. But in America, if you say you don't have a therapist, maybe you're crazy.
Yeah.
So it's like a hard balance, I would say, because you don't necessarily always have to have a therapist.
No.
But then, some people like really, really press it.
Yeah.
And then I think, say for instance, Simone Biles, the best of all the time, so she always talks about her therapist and then, mental breakdown that she had to take a break from. And then I think it's forefront in Ariana Grande, where she got recognized for some shows. One of the people that she called was her therapist.
Yes.
And then I feel like those kind of like maybe gotten a little bit open, but sometimes it's a little bit too much. What do you think of the balance right there?
I think you're absolutely right. I think sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's too much. I think sometimes it's probably not enough. I think there's probably, for as many people are speaking about therapy, there's probably as many people who aren't and might be able to benefit from that. I think it's good to have a network around you that of people who support you and people who can help lift you up when you're down. I think some things obviously probably need more than that, but I always try to ensure that I have the best people around me to either coach me or to support me or to give me whatever I might need.
So I haven't read your book, but is there any tip that you can find in your book how to show up when you don't want to?
There's definitely some tips. Each chapter has 3 key tips that we called, it's the plays that you need to make. And so for one of them, it's like when we talk about imposter syndrome, one of the strategies that I use is I name my imposter. So when I am going through a moment where all of a sudden I feel like, oh, maybe I don't belong here, or I'm not prepared enough, or I'm not skilled enough to be here, I know that that's Josie. I call my imposter Josie. And so literally I acknowledge and I'm like, all right, Josie, thanks for pointing that out, but that's not the time and place, and I can put it aside. And so that was one of the things I shared earlier. People have told me they've now named their imposters. So they will, when they feel that self-doubt coming on, or they feel like they don't belong, or that more detailed imposter syndrome, they'll name that. And this way you separate the fact that it's someone else who, it's you who's thinking that as your imposter, and it's easier to deal with it that way.
More interesting. So is it working?
Oh yeah. Like I said, I read, even though I had to bring the table of contents, I read through it all the time just to revalidate and remind myself. I wrote it down on purpose, so I want to make sure that it helps me out.
So what do you think the biggest takeaway that people can get? I'm sure everybody has different takes and then they dissect and digest. What do you think the biggest takeaway could be?
Is that leadership lessons start early. They start when we're young. They start when we're in a youth program. They start when we're teens. They start when we're in high school. It doesn't matter if you're on the field. It could be in your school and academics. It could be in your community. A lot of the lessons that we feel like are leadership lessons that we actually, as practitioners, go teach about later on in life, they start early. And so I think if you're ever in a position to help coach somebody, coach not just on a field, but anyhow you can coach someone, help them recognize they're building that leadership muscle, and the earlier they build it, the better off they're going to be.
Well, thank you very much. And I was a leader. I ran a nonprofit for 12 years as a president and founder. And I found it, like what you said about trust, and I appreciate that. Like the people trust you, and then people invest in you, that they want to go extra miles because of you. But there is some boundary that sometimes people cross, and then it becomes like a family. But then how do you deal with that? For instance, one of the coach that I met at the BU School Management, Julie just say, I'm wearing the hat of as a president and founder, and then for the 10 minutes, I'm gonna have to address these issues. But then after that, I'm gonna be your friends again. So how do you deal with boundaries issues like that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and there probably is like a balance to this to some extent. I think it comes back to, it's that trust piece, right? So whether you feel family or not feel family, if you have trust, I think people are going to, they believe that you're for the best interest and to make the best decision possible. And I think that's what you always lead with. I also think sometimes families, not everybody likes each other at the moment, but they love each other, usually. And I think that from my perspective, we can have a disagreement, we can not get along, but to your point, if it's in the right interest of the business and you trust me, we're gonna get over it. We're gonna get over it together.
So do you talk about communication skills such as conflict resolution?
Not in here, but I have taught that in a past life. That might be a chapter for the next one.
Are you planning to have another book maybe in the future?
We'll see. I mean, I think every time you do something once, like I'll go back and reflect and be like, oh, I should have done it this way. And so maybe that'll be my next opportunity, but I think I still have some more lessons to learn.
And did you enjoy writing and publishing your book?
I did. I'm glad I went through with it. I don't know if I said this or not, but once I told my kids that I was going to do it, I felt like I was on the hook. So as much as I kind of wanted to back off every once in a while, I'll be like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to go through with it. Because I committed to them, I had to show them that you can set out and you can do anything.
Well, here is your book.
Yes, it is.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming to Around Foxborough and then share your story and then share your book with us.
Listen, Jury, thank you so much. This has been awesome, and I love that we do these segments, and thank you to Foxboro Cable Access. They're amazing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for watching another episode of Around Foxborough. My name is Julie Love. I'm your host. Our website is fcatv.org. Our executive producer is Michael Weber. Our director today is Paul Beck. And see you next time.